Right. Now, I have made a few of the clinical pictures which will be useful to you both during your day-to-day clinical practice as well as for your ASCII. Now, most of the pediatric infectious diseases we will try to cover as much as possible. Not only will we cover the diagnosis, we will also to a certain extent look at treatment. Okay. Now,
Okay,
my
sir.
first question, I'm sure all of you would have seen a lot of children by now in the outpatient with fever and rash, or with fever followed by a rash. The first day they will come to you with fever. Maybe after 2 to 3 days they will come back to you saying the fever is there but my child has developed a rash. Or some people may tell you that my child's fever has come down but then he has developed a rash. And the common question that they will have is, you gave some medicines, whether this rash was because of fever, right?
Yes,
Now,
sir.
I just want to know from every one of you, suppose you get a child with fever and rash, what would be your approach? How would you evaluate the child? Let us start with Neeta first. She is an exam going student and I think she has passed her theory, so she is to prepare for clinicals.
Sir. Sir, whether the fever started first or the rash started first.
Okay?
After how many days of fever the rash has started, and
Okay?
if the rash has started, if whether there was a febrile period and then the rash has started, that one.
Okay.
And associated features like how is the type of rash, where did it start first, and the
Okay.
distribution of the rash, type of
Okay.
the rash, whether it is maculopapular or
Okay.
uh, and
You are
um,
right.
and,
Anybody else would like to add to what Neeta has already stated? Any other postgraduates? Alphonse is there. Alphonse,
Sir,
would you like to add a little more
uh,
to
sir,
whatever Neeta has said?
sir, day of fever and the rash, how is it associated? Like
Yeah,
on which day?
she has said that.
There are other associated features,
Like,
except with fever, rash, any congenital congestion, or
okay,
any like joint pains.
okay,
Mm. And then, sir, any association with any of the antibiotic intake?
okay,
Mm.
yes. I think most of the important points all of you have said. Generally, rash will not appear first and fever will not come later. Generally, it is the fever that comes and then the rash comes, or fever and rash come together. Now, the second point is the timetable of the rash, which Neeta has said. Day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. The uh, your etiology of the rash with fever can change. So you will have to tell me or put it in the group. What are the rashes that will appear on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5 and day 6. There is a timetable of the rash. The third thing is, as Neeta has said, where the rash came first. Many times you will be able to make out the diagnosis depending on where the parents notice the rash first. For example, rubella rash will appear at the behind the ears and at the hairline behind. A chickenpox rash will appear in the abdomen first and then it can spread. A measles rash will appear first on the face. Now, if a rash appears predominantly on the cheeks on the 5th day, then you know that you are dealing with the so-called 5th disease. The third thing is the morphology of the rash, whether it is macular, papular, vesicular, pustular, or other forms. Okay. Then is there a relationship of the fever and rash? Typically in rheumatoid arthritis, the rash is evanescent. Evanescent means it will come and go. Right? It comes when the fever is high and it disappears or it waxes when the fever reduces. So that is very, very typical of a rheumatoid arthritis rash. Then as Alphonse said, for example, if you have got a child with measles, we used to teach our undergraduates as CCCF. That means a measles child will have cough, cold, conjunctivitis and fever. That is very, very typical of a measles rash. And photophobia. A child with measles will have corneal involvement.
Sir, your audio is off, sir. Sir, your voice is not coming, sir.
Is it? Are you listening?
Yes, sir. Now it is heard, sir.
When did it get off?
This corneal involvement you are telling me, sir, that time.
I didn't off it. I don't know. Anyway, now in a child with measles, that corneal involvement will cause photophobia. That is very, very typical of measles. These children will tend to close their eyelids. They are not able to focus on bright light at all. That face itself is suggestive of a disease like measles, which has to be identified. Now, if you look at a child with typhoid, the child will get fever first, then there will be occurrence of hepatosplenomegaly, and then the rash will come mostly on the second week, end of first week or second week, predominantly on the abdomen. That is classical of a typhoid fever rash. That means Alphonse said accompanying symptoms, fever, hepatosplenomegaly, then a rash. Now, if you look at rickettsial infections, if it's a scrub typhus, the rashes appear on the palms and soles. So, what is the accompaniment with the fever and rash will many times tell us the diagnosis. Now, as regard to drug rash, these drug rashes come usually after 7 days of use of a medicine. They don't come immediately. Number two, if the rash is related to a particular drug, that rash is definitely itchy. So any drug rash will be itchy. So that is something that's a clue. Third, usually drug rashes are associated with eosinophilia in blood. Right? So if you have a rash which is non-itchy and the blood does not show eosinophilia, it is very, very unlikely that the rash is due to a drug. And even if you are suspecting a drug rash, if you take a small quantity of that drug, make it into a solution and apply it on the skin, there will be a skin reaction to that particular locally applied medication. So that is a clinical clue to say yes, this is likely to be a drug rash. Now with this basic background, let us go and look at the case scenarios. Okay, now apply the rules that we have learned to this case. The last rule which all of us have to remember is the age of the child, because at certain ages certain rashes are important. For example, in a child less than 5 years viral rashes predominate, but once the child becomes 5 years and above, not much of viral infections occur because the child would have developed a natural tendency of immunity to most viruses after the age of 5 years. So please remember. Now let us apply all what we learned to this case. 7-year-old boy. Look at the age. High grade fever, difficulty in swallowing, rashes on day 2 of illness. The rashes are described as fine, papular, bright red, and intense in creases. The cheeks appear red, rashes faded on the 4th day with desquamation. Neeta,
Sir, scarlet fever.
why do you say that?
7-year-old child, bacterial probably. High grade fever also suggestive of bacterial only. Difficulty in swallowing probably there is some lesions in the oral cavity, and
Yes.
second day of rashes starting. Usually scarlet fever rashes start on the second day of illness with
Correct.
the sandpaper type of rashes on the oral cavity. That is the classical description of scarlet.
No,
So that one.
okay.
Strawberry tongue and all. So faded on the 4th day with desquamation. That I don't know, sir. So all these first
What
three
else?
features maybe I thought scarlet. Other the rashes faded on the 4th day with the desquamation. That one don't know, sir.
Alphonse. Alphonse, who else are there in the group?
Yes, sir.
Apart from Neeta, who else have joined the discussion?
Sir, Parvati ma'am, Uma ma'am, myself.
Okay.
Sir, I got a
Parvati.
case.
Parvati.
Hello, sir.
Yeah. Analyze this. Why the numbers are becoming less and less with time? There are 11 postgraduate students. Rachel, Uma, how
Sir,
is your baby? Are you there? Dr. Uma,
Hello, sir.
are you there?
Yes, sir.
How is your baby doing?
Baby is fine, sir.
Okay, answer.
Faded
Who
on
else is there? Uma, Alphonse, Parvati, and who else?
scarlet fever only, sir. But the rash fading on 4th day with the desquamation.
Okay. Now, there are 1 or 2 points that you people have not yet focused.
Difficulty in swallowing.
That is important, right? Number 2, wherever there is pressure, that area, the rash becomes more in scarlet fever. Why it happens, you have to let me know in the WhatsApp group. There is a particular reason which is related to the pathophysiology of the bacteria. Okay, that is why the creases become, the rashes become intense in the creases, particularly elbow area, knee area, where there is mechanical movement that is happening. Okay.
Okay.
So what are our differentials apart from scarlet fever?
Viral exanthem can be.
Yes, viral exanthem like Epstein-Barr can cause it in a 7-year-old. Other viruses can cause it, or herpingina that can cause it. That can cause a sore throat with skin rash. The other point that we have to look at when there is a child with fever and rash is whether it is only exanthema or whether it is exanthema and enanthema. Children with scarlet fever will have sore throat as well as rash. The same thing with Coxsackie infection. Most of them will have an ulcer in the mouth and a rash outside. Same thing with chickenpox. They may have a rash inside and a rash outside. Same with measles. They will have Koplik spots inside which appears 1 day or 2 days before the rash develops. So that becomes important. Now describe the skin lesion. Describe the lesions.
Strawberry tongue.
Yes.
Red lips with the
Yes.
cracked lips.
Yes. So this is typical of scarlet fever. And the same thing that is happening here, if you look at the picture in the left hand elbow, you can see that the rash is more intense in the creases. And as the days go by, there will be desquamation. Tell me one another disease which is quite serious, which can present with desquamation, particularly of the extremities.
Kawasaki
That is
disease.
Yes. Yes, Kawasaki is the disease. Now these are called pastia lines. That is the intense rash at the creases. This is classically a sandpaper rash. Somebody described that. That is, if you pass your hand on the child's skin, you will find that it is rough like sandpaper and of course desquamation. Now this is the classical picture. But remember, this rash may not be very typical if you have a dark skinned child. So you have to be careful about it. Plus, this sort of tongue, that is strawberry tongue, can occur in more than one disease. Tell us what are the other situations where you will get scarlet, the strawberry tongue.
Kawasaki
One is
only.
scarlet fever.
Kawasaki disease also strawberry tongue is
Yes,
there.
scarlet, the Kawasaki disease can have strawberry tongue, right? So whenever you are asked a question like this, you have to tell the examiner, sir, it could be due to infectious and non-infectious causes. Okay. In infectious causes, you will think of scarlet fever, certain viral infections. In non-infectious causes, you will say Kawasaki disease. Instead of just telling Kawasaki disease, divide your answer so that the examiner knows that you are focused. And probably half to 1 mark extra you will get if you answer like this. Okay. This was a child's thing that Professor Subrao shared with me. This is a real case. You can see that the boy has a sore throat. Can you make out? Now, one of the typical features of scarlet fever rash is that the rash blanches on pressure. You see on the right side, Dr. Subbarao has pressed his hand on the child's back and kept it there for about 30 seconds. And even after he has removed his hand, you can see his finger marks on the child's back. Can you see?
Yes, sir.
That is very, very typical of scarlet fever. It can occur in one more situation, which is very
Dengue
common
fever.
in.
Dengue fever.
Excellent. Dengue can cause this sort of blanching on pressure rash. So this is very typical of scarlet fever and dengue. But in dengue, fever is not a predominant feature. Sore throat may or may not be there. But in scarlet fever, fever is a predominant feature plus sore throat plus the rash. That is the difference. So please remember that. Now the other reasons are toxic shock syndrome, as I told you, and group A beta hemolytic streptococcal pharyngitis, very rarely Yersinia pseudotuberculosis, and viral infections like yellow fever and Kawasaki disease. Those diseases that I have put in bold are much more common than those diseases that I have put in usual format. Now, toxic shock syndrome can have a strawberry sort of rash, but there the other features are much more predominant than the strawberry tongue. How will you differentiate Kawasaki disease from scarlet fever if it occurs in a younger child? What are the differences?
Pardon, what, sir?
Anybody?
Kawasaki and
Scarlet fever versus Kawasaki.
Usually, this
conjunctivitis will be
skin
there in
rashes.
Kawasaki.
Okay. Non-purulent conjunctivitis. Please describe it.
Pimple sparing will
Non-purulent,
be there.
non-exudative conjunctivitis. Very important. Generally, when you have a conjunctivitis, there is watering or exudation. In Kawasaki disease, there is no watering and exudation. That is very, very typical of Kawasaki conjunctivitis. Right.
Peeling of the skin and
Yes,
all will
peeling
start
of the skin
later
can
after
occur in, yeah, can occur in both.
both. But it
And
occurs later in the Kawasaki disease, not in the
yes,
second day of this thing.
very good. What else?
Other systemic involvement.
No, excoriation. In Kawasaki disease, it is classically described as periungual excoriation. And when you have an infant or a toddler, perineal excoriation is a feature of Kawasaki disease. It is not a feature of scarlet fever. Periungual excoriation, perineal excoriation. But this
Yes.
particularly occurs in atypical Kawasaki, infantile Kawasaki. What else?
And that BCG scar becoming
Yeah,
prominent.
BCG reactivation or hyperemia of the BCG scar is typical of Kawasaki disease, not known in scarlet fever. Yes.
Coronary involvement.
Coronary involvement. Very good. Next. Persistently raised leukocytes, CRP, is a feature of Kawasaki disease. This can occur a little later in scarlet fever, and with treatment with proper antibiotic, CRP will come down, the WBC counts may alter, but that will not happen when you give an antibiotic in Kawasaki disease. What else? Pharyngeal involvement is a feature of scarlet fever. Significant pharyngeal involvement with hyperemia, with redness, with involvement of the tonsils is not a feature of Kawasaki disease. What else? Bilateral significant painful lymphadenopathy can occur in scarlet fever.
Scarlet.
Unilateral,
Kawasaki will have unilateral. Sir.
yeah, significant painful lymphadenopathy, Kawasaki disease. Now let us look at the differences. Strawberry tongue present, red eyes, I have told you, red lips only in Kawasaki disease, may not be there in scarlet. I have told you about antibiotics, follicular tonsillitis, edema of the extremities, classical in a Kawasaki disease, not there in scarlet fever, leukocytes and CRP, I have told you. Diagnosis, please.
Fifth disease.
Yeah.
Slap
Due
cheek
to
appearance.
due to
Coxsackie virus.
pardon,
Coxsackie virus, sir.
specific
Parvovirus.
B17. Now, how is this disease generally behaving? What is the natural history of this disease? The natural history of this disease is it is generally uncomplicated. Majority of the children respond to medications. By the time the skin rash comes, the fever would have gone. Are there any specifics about this virus?
It causes pancytopenia.
Yes. So, in which groups of children are you worried about this virus?
In this aplastic anemia.
Yes, in children with aplastic anemia, with children with leukemias and others, and in children who have had a recent bone marrow transplant, and in children with sickle cell anemia, it can cause havoc. It can cause arthropathy also. So the same virus in an immunocompetent child behaves in a mild manner, but the same virus in a child who is predisposed can create much more problems than in a normal child. So that is something that you have to remember. So it is called erythema infectiosum or fifth disease, transient aplastic crisis and arthropathy, and if it occurs in the mother, when the mother is carrying, it can cause non-immune fetal hydrops because of pancytopenia, and incidentally used to treat because this is an immunologically mediated response. So the route of administration is IV, and immunoglobulin can be used to arrest or prevent the transient aplastic crisis or arthropathy. Because we wouldn't have realized that for fifth disease, sometime you will give intravenous immunoglobulin, but this is the situation. Diagnosis.
Erythema multiforme.
I said describe the skin lesion. Your answer is correct.
Sir, the margins are well defined. These are well defined lesions or the palms, erythematous raised macular regions.
Anybody to add to what Neeta has said?
Target lesions.
Excellent. Who said that?
Shweta, sir.
Very good. So these are typically called as target lesions. Can you see a red vesicle in the center? Can you
Yes,
see?
sir. Yes, sir.
So this is typically called a target lesion. And this is very, very common in where?
Drug-induced Steven Johnson, sir.
Yeah, one is Steven Johnson's, yes.
The
You're right. Sometimes it can be Steven Johnson's, or it can Steven Johnson's involves the skin as well as the mucous membrane, isn't it? It can be either spontaneous or related to drugs. Earlier it used to be to anti-leprotic drugs, and nowadays it is much more common with anti-epileptic drugs like carbamazepine. Next. Which are the other situations where you will see erythema multiforme?
Lyme's disease also we will see, sir.
Excellent. Right. Any unusual respiratory disease can cause this. I will say he is a 9-year-old.
Mycoplasma.
9-year-old.
Mycoplasma pneumonia.
Excellent. So mycoplasma can cause erythema multiforme. Now, Mike, I told you drugs we have discussed. Sometimes herpes simplex virus can cause this. If you are suspecting Steven Johnson's, then you have to be very, very careful to treat as well as to follow up this child and see that he has recovered completely. Now let us look at this child, 15-month-old. Please watch the age. Toddler with unremitting fever of 9 days, with a swelling on the left side of the neck, unresponsive to coamoxiclav, administered from the past 4 days. They say if you have a painful cervical lymphadenopathy, the drug of choice is amoxicillin. The referring doctor thought since the child had not responded to treatment, the diagnosis was viral fever. What do you think?
some inflammatory cause, sir.
Yes, it's an inflammatory left-sided swelling. 15-month-old with 9 days of fever.
So continuous fever is there.
Yes, a continuous unremitting fever.
It can be.
Whenever you have a child with fever, if the child responds to antipyretics, your thoughts are different. If the child is unresponsive to antipyretics, your thoughts are different. Generally, infections, particularly viral infections, respond to antipyretic therapy. Most often, mothers will tell you, sir, I gave crocin or paracetamol. The fever came down. My child was very playful, happy. He started eating. At the end of 6 hours, the fever restarted. Then he became dull. This is very, very classic of a viral infection. In a bacterial infection, the fever may come down a little bit or from 102 to 100, but the child will not be very active. In spite of the fever reducing, the activity and the appetite of the child will not be as good as in a child with viral infection. On the contrary, if you have a child who has got an inflammation, the indicator of inflammation for us is fever. It is neither a viral infection nor a bacterial infection, but the fever is a result of inflammation. Such group of children do not respond satisfactorily to antipyretic therapy. When I say inflammation, it could either be a neoplastic inflammation or it could be an autoimmune inflammation. Please remember that. And now answer. And what is also very glaring here is, if there is a left side of the neck swelling, there is no cold, there is no cough, there is no sore throat. Because if the swelling has to occur, there should be a cause for it. It should either be a upper respiratory tract infection, or it should be a local problem like an ulcer or a pustule or something like that. Here nothing of that sort is visible, but there is a significant left-sided neck swelling, and that is what makes you think, particularly in a 15-month-old baby. Any thoughts?
It is Kawasaki disease, sir.
Right. So this is the non-purulent, non-secretory inflammation. Now watch carefully and describe this eye inflammation.
There is limbal sparing, sir.
Excellent. Excellent. So that is the clue. Most conjunctivitis don't spare the limbus. And if you look at the picture on my right, with these eyes shown with two fingers held, the limbus is the area which is between the cornea and the conjunctiva. That junction is spared. This does not occur in any other conjunctival inflammation. This is very, very typical of Kawasaki disease. And please note the age of the baby. It is painless and non-exudative, and there could be associated mild acute iridocyclitis or anterior uveitis, which can be confirmed by slit lamp examination. Iridocyclitis cannot be picked up early on clinical exam. This is the typical progress of the child, and that is the typical peeling with swelling of the dorsum of both feet. Look at the tips of the fingers and toes. So that was classical Kawasaki disease. Why does the BCG scar get reactivated in Kawasaki disease? Why? Uma, Tejasvi?
Yes, sir.
Why? What sort of a disease is Kawasaki?
Inflammatory.
Yes. So there is cross reactivity of T cells in Kawasaki disease between specific epitopes of mycobacterial and human heat shock protein. Because of this mechanism, there is reactivation of BCG. This and the perianal excoriation, these are very, very good clues for us to pick up Kawasaki disease quite early. So the important thing for us in clinical medicine is to open the baby's nappy pad and have a look at the buttocks. Generally, we don't do this. Sometimes we ask the mothers to remove the nappy pad. They'll say, no, sir, my child has voided motion. So we also tend to avoid looking at the bottom.
Perianal.
Now I am reminded of an anecdote which I would like to share. This is a real life anecdote. There was one great teacher by name Dr. Merchant. This Merchant was in that Bhai Jerbai Hospital. He was a honorary senior consultant, very good in his clinical approach. So this man was called one day at night by a very rich man in Mumbai because his grandchild was crying excessively. I'm probably speaking of this incident which happened more than 20 years ago. And at that time, for a home visit, Dr. Merchant would charge a fee like 5,000 rupees. I'm speaking of 25 years ago. And those people came to Dr. Merchant's house in their car. They took him in his car. And then Merchant examined the baby thoroughly after taking away all the clothings. And it is said that there was a red ant that was biting the baby's gluteal area, that is the anal area. So all Merchant did was with a forceps, he took away that red ant, put a little bit of lignocaine, and then put the nappy pad, and the baby went to sleep thereafter. And Merchant took his 5,000 rupees for removing a red ant, and they dropped him back home. So that is the importance of a thorough clinical exam. So those of us who do a thorough clinical exam generally will not miss important clinical findings. So this has been a learning lesson for me from somebody who told this, and I keep remembering and sharing this anecdote with almost all batches of postgraduate students. This is the typical genital area and periungual excoriation. It is said that it is much more common in infancy and toddlers, and it is much more common in atypical Kawasaki than in typical Kawasaki. Atypical Kawasaki is difficult to recognize and difficult to treat because the response to IVIG may not be as optimal as in typical Kawasaki. So the next time when you get a difficult to treat patient, make sure you undress the baby completely and have a look at the baby as a whole. Okay, I think this Alphonse will answer. Are you there, Alphonse? Alphonse? Dr. Alphonse? Parvati?
Sir,
Dr.
failure
Parvati?
of female child. Yes, sir. Hello.
You will answer this question. Please, Shweta, call Alphonse and tell her that she should answer the next question. Call her and ask her to be here. 5-year-old female child, fever since 6 days, rash since 3 days, irritability since 3 days, and pain in the legs since 2 days. Analyze.
Sir, HSP is a possibility. Sir.
Okay, one possibility is HSP, right? Possible. But why irritability?
They can have pain abdomen. So,
Okay.
because joint
Uma?
pains will cause irritability.
This child could typically be even a viral fever. Viral fevers can have myalgia that can cause irritability. There could be rash. They could have pain in the legs because of myalgia, and myalgia can cause irritability. For example, chikungunya. For example, other diseases with muscle and joint involvement. So there are multiple differential diagnoses. The girl was seen by 2 general practitioners. She received amoxicillin for 3 days, chloroquine for 3 days, cefpodoxime for 3 days, and paracetamol, and no response. That is what is very important. These are the investigations. And they did some tests, and you can see the results. Any guess? Any guess? Parvati.
Sir, palm salts.
HCl.
Rickettsial is a
Yes.
possible.
So this is a typical rickettsial scrub typhus rash. Please remember there is a form of rickettsial fever where there may not be a skin rash. Right? So you will have to remember if there is a skin rash, yes. And palms and soles are typically involved in rickettsial fever. Now, what are the other non-specific clues which you will look for in a child with rickettsial fever?
Herald patch.
One is leukocytosis. The second one is
Headache.
thrombocytopenia. The third one is
Hyponatremia.
hypoalbuminemia.
Hyponatremia.
Then the fourth one
Hyponatremia.
is hyponatremia. These are non-specific features and increased CRP. So there are 5. One is leukocytosis, thrombocytopenia, then hypoalbuminemia and hyponatremia and high CRP. Now, leukocytosis again is biphasic. If you did it during the early phase of the illness, the WBC count may be normal. But if you did it during the later phase of the illness, that is after day 6, then there could be leukocytosis. So again, in infectious disease, it all depends on when you did a particular test. For example, in typhoid, if you did Vidal on day 4, it may be negative. But if you did it on day 9, it can be positive. So there is nothing wrong with the test. It all depends on how we chose to do the test during the timetable of the illness, and that is what is important. If all the 5 features are there, that strengthens your clinical suspicion of rickettsial fever. Now, even in rickettsial fever, there is an importance to undress the baby and examine why.
That insect
To
bites
see
lesion can.
that scar.
Very good. You will look for an HR. Now, most often these HRs are in the hidden parts of the body, particularly in the anal or in the
Armpits.
genital area. Now, if you suspect rickettsial fever on clinical suspicion, what extra questions will you ask the parents?
If the
Endemic
child
area,
was
from any
playing
endemic
near
area travel.
Whether they traveled, yes, particularly to wood and forest areas, whether they went to a place where there was high grass, whether they have pets and animals at home, whether there are rodents, etc., inside the house. These are all other things that you will ask. Now, if you go to the IAP website and look for guidelines, there is an excellent review on rickettsial fever. Very good. It's about 3-4 pages. If you can go to the website, that's fine. If you want me to send it to you by email, I will send it. All of you, please read that excellent review, which will give a comprehensive picture about the recognition and management of rickettsial fever. Would you like to go and download, or would you want me to send it to you?
download, sir.
Pardon?
We will download.
Download.
We will download.
Okay, go to IAP website, go to guidelines, and in search you give guidelines for management of rickettsial disease. That author, the first author is one Dr. Manoj Rathi. So download it and please read. It will take you 45 minutes to read, but that's an excellent review on rickettsial fever. The points that you have got there, you may not get it even in the textbooks. So the diagnosis is through enzyme linked immunosorbent assay, and this child has got it positive. The wheel Felix reaction that we use usually, if positive may help, if negative may not contribute. So people are now resorting to the ELISA test and not to Paul Bunel test. This question is for Alphonse. Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Alphonse,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
this is for you.
Yes, sir.
6-year-old male child admitted with fever of 1 week, abdominal distension and periorbital edema of 2 days. In the emergency room, these were the findings. The child has an inguinal lymphadenopathy. He has fluid in the abdomen and significant hepatomegaly. Rest of the systems are normal. Everyone, please be ready with your analysis of this slide. Alphonse, to start.
Sir, that edema appeared, periorbital edema appeared first or abdominal distension, sir.
Fever followed by periorbital edema after 7 days.
Mm. Sir, if it is like a Sir, in case of first episode of nephrotic syndrome, also they can first present with fever,
Yes,
then edema, abdominal distension. Sir, but hepatomegaly is rare. Sir, in other conditions like leishmaniasis,
okay.
hepatomegaly fever. Mm.
Shweta has done a very quick job. She has put it in the group. Very good. That's a very, very good article that I have read. Shweta seems to be very tech savvy, I think.
Nothing like that, sir. I had that article.
Oh, I see. It's a very good article. Now, Uma, can you answer? This slide was a real eye-opener for me. That is why I am asking you. Please sit back and analyze this slide.
Malaria could be sir, but hepatomegaly.
No. Don't go to the etiology. You analyze this slide.
So initially
look
started
at-
with fever.
You look at what is happening in this child. What has caused it will come later.
Started with fever.
Yes.
Then there is some third spacing.
Very good.
And lymphadenopathy. Doesn't look like dengue, no bleed, good
Sir, it's
perfusion.
No, don't go to the etiology.
Sir, it is something like
But he's
infection
stable.
causing hepatic decompensation kind of picture.
Infection causing, please be loud.
Hepatic decompensation, sir.
Okay, that is one possibility. Good.
Like some cystosomia.
Yeah, I agree with you. But what are the other possibilities? Keep a open mind and think.
There is inguinal lymphadenopathy, so it can be either inflammation or infection.
Okay.
And then the child has developed periorbital edema.
No, correct. So if there is an inguinal lymphadenopathy, what will you do?
We'll examine the lower limb for any
Yes,
lesions.
agreed. Your point is very relevant. Next.
We look for
Whether
other
painful or
lymphadenopathies. Lymphadenopathy elsewhere we look for.
Okay. What else? Every line there is giving you some clue.
Child is alert, sir. Not
Very
sick.
good.
And he's hemodynamically stable, so the edema is
Is
not.
that line not important?
Important.
Yes, sir.
Suppose it was a dengue, the fever wouldn't have lasted for 1 week because in dengue you get what is called a biphasic fever, correct? There is some fever and after 4 days the child becomes afebrile, then the child will develop a second bout of fever. And a child on the 6th day of dengue may not be hemodynamically stable if he has got a fluid in the abdomen. But this child is hemodynamically stable. But he has got fluid in the abdomen, he has got periorbital edema. Does that ring a bell somewhere?
So ascites is due to liver pathology and
May
then.
or may not be. One possibility is liver.
Yes.
Now, if ascites is due to liver pathology, then you have to use a different mechanism to explain the periorbital edema.
Hepatorenal syndrome secondary.
Okay. Okay.
So this inguinal lymphadenopathy itself can compress the large vessels. It can actually cause.
No, inguinal lymphadenopathy is outside, no. That rarely compresses the large vessels, isn't it? Unless it invades. Less likely.
So we should think about malignancy.
Even then it can't explain the periorbital edema.
So malignancy.
No, don't go for the
This is possible. Even with rickettsial also possible, no, sir?
Pardon?
Even with rickettsial fever also this is possible. Even with rickettsial fever also this is possible.
Yes, you are right. This child has got a general vasculitis. You know there are lot of capillaries in the eyelid. And when there is a vasculitis, there could be a capillary oozing and that has caused periorbital edema. That has caused fluid in the abdomen. The same vasculitis has caused hepatomegaly. Now the most important clue, if you connect what the other said and Uma said, when there is a local lymphadenopathy, then the child is crying to tell you that examine my drainage areas of inguinal lymphadenopathy. And when they did it, they found an Eshar. That's the learning lesson. Now look at this: thrombocytopenia, normal hematocrit, raised liver enzymes, normal coagulation, normal renal parameters. If you read that article, rickettsial disease can present like a respiratory manifestation, like a CNS manifestation, like a hepatic manifestation, or a renal manifestation. That article tells that. Please go and read that. Before I read this article, I never remembered or realized that rickettsial fever, I knew it could present like a CNS disease, but I didn't know that it can present like a pneumonia or a pleural effusion, nor as a renal presentation. GI manifestations I knew. Now, if a child presents with a renal manifestation, the outcome is disastrous. So these were some very important learning points from that article. I'm sure all of you will read through that. And that is how he was treated. And These were the unusual features. And just because there is no history of travel to a forest area, it does not rule out the possibility of a rickettsial disease. So whenever you have got a local lymphadenopathy, it is prudent that we re-examine the child and look at the drainage areas which have caused the lymphadenopathy. And a very inexpensive drug like doxycycline cure almost completely. So that is the story. That was the
Even in our
yes.
hospital, when we have some patient with multi-system involvement and in shock and all, we prophylactically, I mean empirically start with the doxycycline till the test is pending.
Yes. Yes. ESRs may not be there in all children. It may be there in majority of the children. Now this slide will show you the distribution of ESR on the child's body. You see 19% on the head, face and neck and 33% in the genital area and 21% in the axillary area. Except for the face, we don't examine the head, we don't examine the neck, we don't examine the axilla, and we do not examine the genitalia, inguinal regions and buttock. So 33 plus 21, that is 54, plus 19, that is 73%. The SR will be in areas where we don't give importance to our clinical examination. And we might miss an SR. The parents may not feel important about it because they may think it is some bite. But as clinicians, it is important for us to undress the child and look at it. And it is not surprising that many times consultant would have missed the SR and a very sincere postgraduate student would have picked it up. It is possible. So gradually weaned off ventilator and inotropic support, completed antibiotic course and 7 days doxycycline, and the child was discharged. Shweta, this is your case. Are you ready?
Yes, sir.
12-year-old girl presented with erythematous rash over her face for the past 3 months, which exacerbates on sun exposure. There are also rashes over the sun exposed areas that persist for weeks. On examination, there is a butterfly shaped malar rash. Oral cavity examination reveals a painless palatal ulcer. Discuss.
This is typical SLE rash, sir.
Correct. How will you confirm?
By doing ANA antibody.
No, don't go to ANA antibodies. First say that there could be abnormal WBC count. There could be increased acute phase reactants like platelets, CRP, ESR, and then you will look for specific tests to confirm the possibility of collagen vascular disease like SLE, particularly the sex and the age are favorable. And remember here there is no fever. Sometimes in SLE fever begins and then they develop this sort of rash, and you know all the 10 diagnostic criteria that are important for the arrival of conclusion for SLE. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now this question is to Uma. 3-year-old, fever of 3 days, few rashes on the face, red eyes, rhinorrhea. The first year postgraduate had recognized this as viral fever and skin rash, and he was sending the child back home. Uma. Are you there?
Sir, streptococcal. Hello.
I'll go back. Fever of 3 days, few rashes over the face, red eye, rhinorrhea. You will not get a red eye in streptococcal infection.
Should be some viral herpes, sir. The rash looks like
Okay, we will ask
at the angle of
Parvati.
the mouth.
It looks like MISC, sir.
Okay, we will ask Parvati.
Sir, child is sick looking.
Neeta.
Sir,
Neeta.
yes, sir,
Yes, sir.
I'm there.
Alphonse. Alphonse. Are you there? Alphonse.
Pharyngoconjunctival fever, sir. This one.
What is that called? This is typical of measles.
Adenovirus.
Measles. We have seen as postgraduate a lot of children with measles, so we cannot forget. Probably by the time you became postgraduates, so many children have been given measles vaccine, so you are not seeing a typical case of measles. This is very, very typical of measles. Now, why is this diagnosis important? It is said in a Chinese proverb that count your children after an attack of measles. What does that mean?
They'll die very soon. Give less time for.
No, they will get into complications. Respiratory, GI, CNS. Number 2, measles can spread like wildfire. If one baby has got measles, he can spread it to all other children. And number 3, measles can cause preventable blindness. Why?
Because of vitamin A deficiency, which is seen in measles.
Yes,
and also malnutrition.
And
SSP can.
That corneal involvement will be.
yes, correct. Corneal involvement, reduction in the retinol binding protein, plus malnutrition, plus anorexia. So if you see a child with measles, please give him 1 dose of vitamin A. If you don't give 1 dose of vitamin A to a child suspected with measles, I will assure you that you will get 1 whiplash on your back when you die and go to hell. At least 1 you will get. You may get more also, but 1 you will get a whiplash. Irrespective of the child's vitamin A status, 1 dose of vitamin A has to be given. If measles occurs in a malnourished child, then you double the dose of vitamin A. If the child is not vomiting, give it by mouth. If the child is vomiting, give it by an intramuscular injection. The injection is called Aquasol, which can be given intramuscular. The same Aquasol, you can break the ampule and give it even by mouth. Particularly in areas where somebody is not good in giving intramuscular injection, or you don't have a syringe to give. So break the ampule and pour that vitamin A into the child's mouth. That is very, very important. Now you can recognize measles before the onset of rash, and these are typical Koplik spots. These Koplik spots appear in the inner surface of the cheek 1 to 2 days before the onset of rash. Now when I put this picture, this is cough, coryza, conjunctivitis and fever. Look at the typical child's face and look at the eyelids closed. That is all because this child has significant photophobia. Now this question is to Parvati. 1-year-old cough since 3 weeks, severe bouts, unresponsive to bronchodilators, cough suppressants and amoxicillin. Possible diagnosis.
The post-viral.
Okay, possible. Yes, possible.
Pertussis. Cough since 3 weeks.
Diagnosis.
Whooping coughs.
Pardon?
The whooping cough.
Yes, it is pertussis. You look at the video again. See that baby develops continuous bouts of cough. And when the baby develops continuous bouts of cough, baby is unable to take a breath and inhale. So at the end of continuous bouts of cough, the baby takes a damn deep breath and that's the whoop. Did you watch it? Watch that whoop. That's an inspiratory sound after bouts of cough. That sound that the baby is making, that's a very deep, fast inspiration. That is the classical whoop. You may not get this classical whoop in an infant. And there they may have these bouts of cough followed by vomiting. So many times you will miss out on a whoop. If the whoop is there, yes. If the whoop is not there, still you can't rule out the possibility of pertussis or parapertussis. Adenoviral infections can cause cough like this. How will you diagnose?
Leukocyte count will be very high, more than 20,000.
Sometimes there could be leukemioid reaction. There could be lymphocytosis. And of course, the cough plate that you use to recognize and grow the bacteria. This is another child. So please do not miss out on a whooping cough particularly. Remember that even if the child gets a whooping cough, these children have to be immunized 1 month later. Just because the child got whooping cough, the child may not get a lifelong immunity. So 1 month later, you have to immunize these children. And there is some treatment for children who stay along with this child. So read that and put it up in the group. And also put up the complications of whooping cough in the group. This is one more. It is so pathetic to see these children coughing. A Chinese proverb said, whooping pertussis means 100-day cough. 100-day. That means the cough can go on and on and on for such a long time. Now, this is the optimal time for diagnostic testing. 1 to 2 weeks, 2 days culture and PCR is coming up. Then in 2 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks, serology, that is the paired sera that you will do. The only thing from the time we studied whooping cough to now is that PCR technology has come in as a boon in the diagnosis. Okay, whom I will ask this question. I will ask this to Neeta. 3-year-old male child with fever, mild grade since 4 days, 1 episode of epistaxis in the morning, last vaccination taken at the age of 4 months. He is now 4-year-old. Febrile, tachypnic, maintaining saturation in room air. Throat examination, whitish membrane, insignificant cervical lymph nodes, and Albert stain is negative. Neeta.
Sir, diphtheria, sir.
Yes, but Albert stain is negative now.
Yes, sir.
So what is to be done? If you took this smear from the superficial area of the patch, sometimes you will get a Albert stain negative. So you have to peel that patch, sometimes it will bleed, and take the smear from the deeper aspects, because the superficial aspect, the patch will be so much decayed that you may not find bacteria. However, clinically, if you suspect diphtheria, please remember that treatment is mandatory. Confirmation can be done, but to start treatment immediately is mandatory. This is one disease that is coming up in the recent past, because children take primary immunization, they don't take the first booster, they don't take the second booster like this child, and because the primary immunization immunity wakes us and wanes away with time, they are likely to get. That is the reason why instead of giving tetanus toxoid at 10 years, we are now giving Tdap at 10 years, because it protects against tetanus, diphtheria and whooping cough, which can also occur in adolescence, and there it will be atypical, not like the ones that I showed you here, a cough that does not respond to treatment, that could still be whooping cough. And to immunize the mother with Tdap 2 doses helps to protect the baby during infancy. Again, Neeta, 4-year-old female child presented with swelling in the neck, drooling of saliva since 5 days, partially immunized, was tachypnic, breathing through the mouth with suprasternal retractions, tachycardia and saturation at room air with 88%. Mild pallor, whitish membrane extending from both tonsils, soft palate, posterior pharyngeal wall and bull neck. Diagnosis.
Same, sir, diphtheria.
Yes. Please remember, it is not only penicillin, but you will have to give anti-diphtheritic serum to these children, and they can go in for respiratory arrest at any time, and therefore you have to keep them in careful monitor. There is a book called Adventure in Two Cities or something. This is written by A.J. Cronin. He was a physician. In that, he explains the condition of a child with diphtheria. He would have managed a child with diphtheria, and he would have asked the nurse to do pharyngeal suction once in 2 hours. There will be 3 batches of nurses. The morning batch nurse would have done her job. The afternoon batch nurse would have done her job. The night batch nurse, Dr. Cronin, will not be very confident. She will be very close to the medical superintendent of that hospital. She will be on duty. So Dr. Cronin goes to the ward and tells her specifically, don't sleep. Clear the throat of this child once in 2 hours and goes home. And then he gets a call at night. This nurse would have slept and the baby would have swallowed that patch and the baby would be no more. You should read that, Adventures in the Two Worlds. That's the book name. If you can buy it along with the same author's book called The Citadel. These are 2 books worth reading by any medical graduate. That's the patch. Remember, a diphtheritic patch bleeds when you try to separate it from the mucosa. So these are the differential diagnosis of diphtheria: group A streptococcus, infectious mononucleosis, Vincent's angina, oropharyngeal candidiasis, deep tissue infection of the neck, and Lemierre syndrome. Now, diphtheria, you know that fever is not significant. It is a grey, dirty patch. Okay. Significant cervical lymphadenopathy. The important thing is it is not only throat. It can involve the heart. It can cause neurological problems like palatal palsy, etc., etc. So early recognition becomes important. Now all other differential diagnosis, I think you will be able to read on your own. And complete blood count and cultures, these are the other tests that you will do. And this is the typical Albert stain, which can show you this Chinese letter sort of presentation. Now you can also assess the extent of toxin production by what is called ELEX test. The stronger this test, more the chances that this child is likely to go into complications. So when you recognize diphtheria, if you are treating this child in your hospital, this child should be isolated. There should be availability of anti-diphtheritic serum, and you should have the facility to shift him to ICU as necessary or refer him to a place where it's available. So these are the features which will tell you when to suspect diphtheria: fever, significant throat pain, noisy breathing, particularly in pharyngeal and laryngeal diphtheria stridor, diffuse neck swelling, a grayish dirty white patch extending into and below the pharynx. Removing the membrane is difficult and it bleeds on removal. So that's the dose of anti-diphtheric serum. More the involvement, more would be the need for anti-diphtheritic serum. Diphtheria is a notifiable disease and you have to give contact prophylaxis. I want you to put it up in the WhatsApp group. Now this question is to Alphonse. 12-year-old girl from Orissa developed gradual painless swelling of the right lower limb. Edema is non-pitting and the edema is rubbery. Significant inguinal lymphadenopathy is present, otherwise normal. Alphonse.
Sir.
Diagnosis. Diagnosis, please.
Filariasis.
Yes. So this is typical of filariasis. So remember that. Sometimes you can get this non-pitting edema. Now there are 2 pictures here, and the one that you can see in both is what is called granular conjunctivitis. You can see some granular areas in the conjunctiva, and that is very, very typical of viral conjunctivitis. So that is a clue when you have a child with conjunctivitis. If you find that there is granular, it is suggestive of a viral conjunctivitis. Now this question is to Parvati.
So one DD is eczema.
Yes.
Then ringworm.
Anything else?
There's some worm.
Cutaneous larva migrants.
Cutaneous?
Larva migrants.
Who said that?
Shweta sir.
Very good. You are right. Management. Management. Albendazole.
Albendazole.
This question is to Uma. Diagnosis. What is the skin lesion? Uma, are you there? Shweta,
Ecchymotic patches.
look at the area of the body, particularly the one on the left hand side.
Sir, erythema nodosa.
Over the bone components. Yeah.
Erythema nodosum is the diagnosis. What are the causes of erythema nodosum?
Leprosy.
Yes.
Then rheumatic. No, not rheumatic. What?
Tell the common causes first. No, leprosy is not a common disease. No.
No,
It is
sir.
much more common than leprosy.
Tuberculosis.
Tuberculosis, isn't it? Streptococcal infections. These are much more common than leprosy. Now, drugs can cause it. These are the drugs: sulfa, penicillin, phenytoin. Infections: mycoplasma, streptococcus, tuberculosis, fungal rickettsia. Then it is due to cell. You have to treat the cause, and it is the most common form of paniculitis, right? So that is something that you have to remember. This question is to Parvati.
There is honey crusting kind of lesions around the oral
Yes.
cavity. Impetigo.
What's the diagnosis?
Impetigo, sir.
Look at the
Toxic shock
forehead.
syndrome. It's a 10.
Healing of skin is also there.
So
It's a toxic epidermal necrosis.
scalded skin syndrome, much more common below 2 years. It is due following localized lesions in the ears, conjunctiva or umbilicus. There is something called a Nikolsky sign. Read up about it. You have to treat this child as an emergency. It can occur both due to methicillin sensitive and methicillin resistant streptococcal aureus. These are the common drugs that you will use. Nikolsky sign is if you put your finger on the skin and push the skin will peel away. And that confirms your clinical diagnosis. But in this child, you need not try for Nikolsky's sign because it is already there. Neeta?
Palatal petechiae is there, sir.
Yes.
Herpes. In herpes infection, we can see.
Yes, herpingina is a possibility. Streptococcal pharyngitis is a possibility depending on the other associated clinical findings. So these are called Forsheimer spots. They usually accompany the skin rash of rubella. They can be seen in scarlet fever, measles, etc., etc. They are called as Forsheimer spots because they were identified by this gentleman, Frederick Forsheimer. Okay.
Sir, if a child comes with only that, what should we do, sir?
Most likely it will be a viral infection. Diagnosis.
This is erythema marginatum, sir.
Very good. So, this is the typical rash of rheumatic fever. It's an evanescent, non-puritic, blanchable macular rash. I told you, in rheumatoid arthritis also there is a fever-sensitive evanescent rash. Here again, rheumatic fever, rheumatoid arthritis. Starts as an erythematic macule, not very common in our setup, probably because we have dark-skinned individuals, much more common in the West, and it is rarely seen in hereditary angioedema. So it is due to molecular mimicry. If you read Anant Narayan Panikar microbiology, all the 5 manifestations of rheumatic fever, he has given the streptococcal bacterial body membrane and explained all the lesions. 4-year-old child, fever of 4 days followed by this rash. Uma.
Sir, hand, foot, mouth disease.
Okay.
Vesicular looks like
Typically, Ganotti-Crosty syndrome usually resolves spontaneously, can occur because of a virus or a vaccine. So this does not require treatment. Look at the skin rash. In hand, foot, mouth disease, it is generally macular followed by vesicular sort of rash. Here there are no vesicles. And this will not involve the palms and soles, but hand, foot, mouth disease will involve the palms and soles as well as the gluteal area and the inside of the mouth. That's the difference between the hand, foot, mouth disease and Ganotti-Crosty syndrome. The important thing is to recognize it and share with the parents that this is going to settle down and there is no need to panic. Yes, Alphonse.
Cellulitis.
Any other differential?
Erythroderma, sir.
Any other differential?
Toxic epidermal necrolysis.
Anything else? Why have
yes.
they put a mark there? Can you see a blue mark at the ankle and a red mark on the shin? Somebody has marked it, no?
Well
Why
defined.
have they done that?
Well demarcated.
Well defined lesion. So
When it is well defined, it is erysipelas, and when it is not well defined, it is cellulitis. Both are caused, this is caused by group A streptococcus, and giving penicillin for 5 days is okay. Cellulitis may either be due to strepto or more commonly it is due to staphylococcus, and it can spread without particular area of demarcation. Now I will ask this question to Uma. Are you there?
yes, sir.
I'm asking you a very simple question. 7-year-old girl comes with recurrent pneumonia and gait disturbance. Diagnosis.
Ataxia telangiectasia.
Very good. Very good.
With a picture.
Right? So
Yes, sir.
that's it's a immunodeficiency sort of condition. That is the reason why these children get recurrent respiratory infections. Now I'll ask this question to Parvati. High fever and flushed appearance.
One dengue
The
fever.
mother asked you to notice the ear.
Only ear is flushed, sir.
That is why I have put that picture. Otherwise, why will I put it?
Local infection of the pinna.
Otitis externa.
Anybody will get 100 rupee dairy milk from me. Neeta should be telling this. Neeta, anyway, you will not get the 100 rupee dairy milk because I am giving you a clue. Last week, Neeta called me and said, there are no clinically interesting cases in the ward, sir.
Dengue fever, dengue fever.
Very good. This is typical of a dengue, early manifestation of dengue fever. Much before the platelets go down and the hematocrit increases, this is a classical sign of dengue fever. Of course, this is I told you, the dengue fever rash blanches on pressure. And here this is because of vasomotor instability. And this will occur usually after the 4th day, 5th, 6th day when there is a capillary leak. Look at the fingers. They have not, the pressure has not blanched at all. Now in dengue, there are 3 types of rashes. One is the skin rash that I showed you. The second one is the skin rash which occurs in the early phase of dengue fever. And then there is a skin rash that occurs in the 2nd week of dengue fever. And if the skin rash which occurs in the 2nd week of fever becomes itchy, then that is a clue that the child is recovering. So please read about the skin rashes in dengue fever. This is the classical facial appearance due to fluid accumulation. This is the typical skin rash which occurs during the early phase, and this is the positive tourniquet test. Alphonse, are you there?
Sir.
This is your question. Newborn 1 week, severe umbilical sepsis. Elder sibling had similar problem and died in infancy.
Sir, one immunodeficiency disease in
Correct. What is likely?
Leukocyte adhesion defect.
Excellent. This baby had a count of more than 45,000 WBCs. Okay. So I think I have covered reasonably most of the infectious disease areas with fever and skin rash. Read up about all this, and if you have any questions, please answer. Next Thursday, I am not free. I am going to the state conference. I think Dr. Rakshay and quite a few others are also coming. So we can have our class on Wednesday. I will send a case scenario in 1 or 2 days. And instead of Thursday, we will have the class on Wednesday. And like Sakshi, Neeta also has cleared her theory. It is all because all of them have very sincerely written answers to the questions that I had put. And what sincere efforts they have put has given them the results. So those of you who have not done this in the recent past may answer a question on approach to a child with fever and rash. If you send me the questions in the recent past, I will select one question and send it to you. Go back and read the article, and I will put one more article in the group. Approach to a child with fever and rash. Read that article and then you can write your answers. Any questions?
Sir, treatment of whooping cough, sir.
Whooping cough, the treatment is erythromycin for about 2 weeks, but erythromycin does not reduce the intensity of cough. Earlier you start erythromycin, the better it is. Once the whooping cough starts, it will take its own sweet time to settle down.
Okay, sir.
The focus should be on prevention. Remember, I have told you earlier that even if you gave 3 doses of DPT vaccine, the extent of protection against pertussis is around 64% only. So the fact that this child has taken immunization does not prevent this child to have whooping cough because it is not fully protective. Unlike hepatitis A vaccine, which is 100% protective with 2 doses given 6 months apart.
Okay, sir.
The most important thing is to suspect whooping cough.
Okay, sir.
Any other question?
No, sir.
Okay, how many of you are attending the state conference? Anybody attending? It's on 3rd, 4th and 5th of December at Hospet. There are PG sessions also. I think you people are hard pressed for number of PGs. New PGs have not come, so I don't know how free you will be. Any questions?
No, sir.
No? Okay, then I think it's time for you and me to have a cup of coffee.
Okay, sir.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
Thank you, sir.